Hey all, welcome to this live stream. It is TikTok month on the Vidwheel Creator Network, and that's why I'm sitting here today with Chris Bogue. Chris is a content creator with a focus on, well, kind of being funny and TikTok and sales. There's a lot of different pieces there. And that's actually how this live stream came about. Chris was dropping some knowledge on one of my LinkedIn posts last week, and one thing led to another, and here we are in a live stream. So, to those of you viewing via live stream, if you have a TikTok question that is the topic of conversation today, drop it in the respective chat on YouTube or LinkedIn. I will try to keep eyes on them. Chris, it's great to have you.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, and I will give you a moment here to introduce yourself, and then we'll get to those questions on TikTok. So, Chris, do you want to give us the short version of your kind of story, how we got here today?
Yes, my name is Chris Bogue. I am an entrepreneur and a coach and a writer and a sketch comedian from Chicago. And I specialize in mercifully short video content that drives revenue. So you can find me on TikTok. My handle is Chris Sells His Soul. You can also find me on LinkedIn. I am a content creator, and you can ring my bell if you want to follow me. I post every single day. And I'm also on Twitter at Chris Sells Soul, and you can find all my stuff at my website, christopherbogue.com. So, yeah, all things video. Particularly, I live in this world between sales and content marketing. This is something a lot of companies, they do not have the left and right hand working together on this. And I've really kind of created a hybrid. And it works on LinkedIn. It works on TikTok. I send a lot of direct sales videos. So yeah, I'm happy to get into what I've been doing with TikTok and what I've learned about TikTok in the past year and what it's done for my business.
Awesome. Yeah. And for anyone who's checking this out, find Chris on LinkedIn. I believe it's in the description of this live stream, but if it isn't, I'll drop a link in the chat there. Chris's stuff is great, super entertaining, really like authentic and, you know, like lighthearted and informative at the same time. So it's a pleasure to watch, which is not always the case with B2B video content. So thank you for doing all that, Chris. And I'm going to give another moment for people to pop any TikTok questions in the chat. You can continue to do that as we go through this conversation as well. But before we get to that, do you want to talk Second City a little? That's kind of a big feather in your cap, no?
Yeah. So, you know, I've done a lot of sales, which is why I have this whole sales methodology. But the real secret sauce to what I do is the city of Chicago. I was born and raised here. I did a lot of comedy on a lot of different stages. I was a sketch comedian at Chicago's Second City. So I was writing and directing shows where I was not in it. You know, which taught me a lot about working with other people, writing dialogue, getting a natural performance out of other people. I did a lot of improv comedy. I had a multi-year run at Comedy Sports that was, it was a hybrid of like long form stuff and sketch and also like whose line is it anyway kind of games. And I've also have this, I don't talk about this as much, but this very experimental background, this style of theater called neo-futurism. It's like this obscure style in Chicago, but it's basically a hyper honesty, right? So one thing you'll notice about all my videos is I'm always trying to take the audience on an experience. You know, it's not me just sitting talking to the camera. The camera is another character. And, you know, I use it as a tool for education and storytelling because, yeah, instead of just explaining something to the audience, you can actually discover the lesson in real time, and you can create situations where, you know, you create a problem for them and you kind of just solve it together. And that was really what the neo-futurist stuff taught me to do. You're not allowed to play a character. You're not allowed to lie. It's hyper honesty. And you're really just trying to take the audience on an experience with you.
Very cool. That's I've not heard of that before, but I like that. And, you know, audience interaction is kind of the thing, right? And to bring that to spaces like this. Like we're getting audience interaction now. So like Christos dropped a comment that said that your videos are epic, right? There you go.
Thank you. Well, yeah, and this is actually something, this is something
Yeah.
about the Second City that I don't think people understand. They don't teach you how to be funny. Like improv comedy is not about jokes. Stand-up comedy is about jokes. Stand-up comedy is about the performer. And what is it about the performer that's different? But improv is about playing, it's about listening, and it's about setting up someone else to look good. And this is not something corporate leaders really understand. They're used to like explaining why they're better than everyone, explaining why they're better than the competitors. And what I actually do is I go out there and I find the people who are already doing things, who are already making moves, and I play off their move, And when I promote my show, I have a podcast. I do a live stream every Thursday at 3 p.m. And when I do interviews, I have my guests come in. And sometimes we'll do improv in the middle of the show, or I'll throw them into a comedy sketch. And these are oftentimes not comedic performers, but it doesn't matter because I tell them, before we go off, I go, hey, I am trained to make you look good. No matter what you say, I'm on your side. I'm going to make it funny. And I'll do man on the street interviews. I'll do, kind of live improv stuff because when your only goal is making the other person look good, you never have to think, now you're not thinking about like, how can I say something funny? It's just, how can I make the other person look good? And it's why I always look very calm and relaxed when I'm doing these bits. And people are like, how can you do that without getting freaked out? And it's like, it's because it's not about you. It's about everybody but you.
That's an excellent mentality to have, right? And a kind of I think that lends itself a little bit along those servant leadership side of things, right? You're helping other people, be funny or look good or do whatever it is, and I think that does. You've got a goal there. You don't have to overthink it. So that is awesome.
Even on TikTok too, it's like. I do, and again, I'm a sketch comedian, so like I have sketch characters that are recurring, and I do a lot of that stuff. But a lot of my high performing videos are just me talking straight to the camera, and people focus a lot on the things I'm saying, and I tell them I'm like a big part of the reason why my content is a hit is because I'm just looking directly at the audience. I'll sit there and I'll look and I'll do things. If I'm doing a straight to camera thing on TikTok, I'll ask a question, and I'll really sit there for a moment and let the audience think about it, and I'm really trying to actually get them into a certain frame of mind. And it's not so much that the words are magical. It's how I'm treating the audience, how I'm interacting with the audience. And, I have this belief that it's not a belief. I hear it all the time. It's like, if you're a big sales trainer, if you're an author, if you're a keynote speaker, these are people who they speak into the microphone and they imagine a sea of 5,000 people in front of them, and they're doing this big epic speech on this stage where they're 30 feet away from the audience. And on TikTok, your audience is, 18 inches away from you. They are closer to your face than the average person will ever get. It's a much different way to interact with them. And I always say that if you want to succeed on TikTok, talk to your audience like they're sitting across the table from you drinking coffee, because they are.
Yeah, that's a good take on it. And that makes it a little more one-on-one, which I think probably take some of the edge off to a lot of the folks who also get a bit overwhelmed with the prospect of a million people seeing a video. Talking to one person and creating that experience for one. And you've brought up TikTok. If anybody has TikTok questions specifically, feel free to drop them in one of the chats. How are you overall using TikTok for your business? You brought up that you're doing some character, some direct to camera. Do you have an overall strategy that you're using?
I was told by my mentor, he's been doing the creator thing successfully for almost a decade now. And, he runs his own company. He's got his own, team of a dozen people or whatever working on his content. And he told me, if you want to assemble an audience of 1 million, do it one by one. And TikTok for me is one, it's just a grounds for experimentation, right? So they want you doing stuff every day, every other day. Anytime I coach clients, anytime I'm like coaching teams, I tell them like, look, you do not know what quality content is. I do not know what quality content is. Your audience is going to reveal that to you. And you're going to get very frustrated because when you're making videos, you'll have an epic video that you spend 2 weeks on that bombs, and something you just rattled off while you're waiting in line at the grocery store goes viral, and like it's very hard to predict what's going to be a hit and what's not. So for me, it was like I went on TikTok. I was originally doing very talking heads kinds of things where I was just talking about sales and video. And then I went on TikTok and I did Jordan Belfort's Sell Me This Pen. And I'm like, instead of explaining to the audience how to beat this riddle, I'm going to create a Jordan Belfort like character. I'm going to have a boss. I'm going to cut to me in a suit and tie, and he's going to be holding the pen in the audience's face and say, sell this to me right now. And then the audience is going to have to sit there and sell it with me. And it went viral. It was the first thing I had that just blew up, and it showed me, hey, you know what? You can do this. This is safe. If you put on the suit and do this different character, people aren't going to say like, what's this guy doing? Like, switching costumes, and people just buy into it, and if I have something that's a hit and my audience keeps telling me, I like this character, I want more of this, I'm just going to give the people what they want, and it's like cross-posting stuff to LinkedIn helps sometimes. I found that like I will have stuff that blows up on TikTok and I'll post it on LinkedIn and it bombs, and then vice versa. I'll have stuff that'll blow up on LinkedIn and it'll bomb on TikTok. But it's like I'm always experimenting, and this is actually like there's a lot of different schools of thought on TikTok, and a lot of people will tell you that like you have to niche down, you have to find the one specific thing you always talk about and just do it over and over and over again. But I've seen a lot of creators do that and burn out. And what happens with me is now I've just got a bunch of different formats that have been tested with my audience. So it's like the boss, if I go out there as the boss, that is like a type of TikTok I can do. It's sketch comedy. The people who follow me who like stuff like Corporate Bro, if you've ever seen him on LinkedIn, Sales Feed and Will Aitken and all the people that do sales related comedy. If I put on the boss and I do kind of a little bit more subversive sketch about sales, it lands with that audience, I've got a different character named Vague Man, he's a little bit more of satirizing like corporate speak. And I really kind of tap into like a lot of these emotions of insecurity and not knowing what the right thing to say is. So you just say something generic. And he plays a little bit more with the thoughtful people in my audience, the writers, the creative types, who don't really think of themselves as salespeople. And then I've got instruments here, sometimes I'll be playing music. Sometimes I'll be talking about entrepreneurship. Sometimes I'm talking about sales. I am selling me right now as a trainer, as a consultant. I've got a course coming out, and 2 courses in a book is the goal by the end of the year. But right now I am still introducing myself to the world. So I believe it's like you are not one person. People are complex. And when I coach my clients, I tell them you are not one person anymore. You are like 5 different people. Sometimes you're the teacher, sometimes you're the student, sometimes you're the parent, sometimes you're the son. It's really just figuring out like which version of you would be best to lean into at this moment, and that was a Second City thing too, where it's like they teach you don't do caricatures. You do characters, you base them on real people. And people laugh at Vague Man, not because I'm making fun of a specific company, but because I'm satirizing the part of myself that sometimes doesn't get specific, you know, or the part of myself that wants to just please everybody, or, you know, that boss. I really tap into every boss I've ever had that's busted my chops throughout my career, including myself, because I'm too hard on myself. And yeah, it's also just given me a vehicle to like shamelessly promote myself. Whenever I'm the boss, I just scream at the audience that they should hire me because they don't know what they're doing. And I found a way to like make my own commercials. And it's like the thing my audience actually likes the best about my live streams. That's their favorite part, is the middle part where we jump into character and I do my fake ad screaming at the audience.
Nice. Yeah, and that's interesting, because that kind of follows some other stuff I've been hearing a lot recently, which is you're saying you draw on your own experience or your own characteristics there and just amplify them, right? The boss is what you are internally saying to yourself about how you should be better, and other things like that. That's
a less patient version of me, a version of me that's more focused on money. You know, and like, this is what they teach you in the Second City too. They teach you don't have to think of a crazy character that's never existed. Do an impression of your dad, you know, and just play up just whatever is funny about your dad. Just turn that all the way up to 11, you know? So it's like, your dad, like he just wants to talk about sports. Okay. You just play your dad, but turn everything into a sports analogy, and always be fixated on the TV and half paying, you know, and just like you summon that part of you. And that's most of the beloved characters from SNL, you know, Mike Myers, Austin Powers, great example. That's just his dad. His dad was a British performer. You know, he is just doing an impression of his dad, and he's playing up the absurd 1960s stereotypes, but we laugh at the humanity because he's actually channeling a real person there.
Yeah. So we do have a question that came in from Chris, who's located in the Athens area, and he is asking we're going right back to TikTok here. How can he reach people from outside his country? Based on his analytics, he says he's getting almost all Greek users. Do you know anything about that? Kind of reaching outside of your geographic area?
Yeah. So I can't specify like how TikTok operates in different countries. I can say that one of my strategies for content, and a lot of the more successful accounts I know do this, is like, find somebody who already has your audience and just reverse engineer from there. You know, like we were talking earlier about like finding people who are a year ahead of you in your journey. If you start looking at the types of posts they do, if you start stitching with them, interacting with them, getting into their comments, you can train the algorithm to put you into their feed, you know. And this is what I've been able to do on LinkedIn, but it's helpful for TikTok too. It's just like, if you start interacting with the accounts you want to be associated with, and you're making posts that are appealing to the same audience, and you're talking to their audience, and you're getting into their comments, that for me is how I strategically get out of whatever zone I'm in and into another one, you know? So it's like, yeah, those people, I would just try to find the people who you want to be like, and just get friendly with them.
I like that as advice, right? There's no reason with really any of these marketing strategies to reinvent the wheel. We the podcast this month, as part of TikTok month, we talked to Todd Klauser, and he talked about, you know, you find the videos that resonate with you. You kind of try to see what's similar about them, and that can influence how you make your own video content. So same idea, right? Like, find what's working, find what looks good to you or resonates with you, or in this case, people who have broken out of the market and are doing their thing, and take what they're doing exactly, but you know, like you
Well,
can
and
use them to inform your content, right?
yeah, and some of it is very subtle things, you know, like
Yeah.
for example, so like I caption all my stuff. The captions are very important to me. And you know, when I first started, you know, doing TikTok, I had my captions at the bottom of the screen, just like you do in a horizontal video. Well,
Sure.
that doesn't work on TikTok. Those are covered up by buttons, you know? So
Mhm.
way fewer people were able to read the captions. People who were trying to read the captions weren't able to. And it's like by just spending some time noticing, like, oh, where do all the top creators put the captions? Okay, they actually put it on the left side of the screen, slightly below center, you know, so that changed the way I was filming things. So now I make sure whenever I'm filming things, that spot is open because I know there's going to be a caption track there. But those are just the little subtle things where, like, maybe you had a video that was amazing, but because the layout didn't play well with the format of the platform, it's not getting watched, you know? And this is why it's like you have to repeatedly do stuff. You have to repeatedly check out who's succeeding at it. Because a lot of the time people will think, oh, it must be because my message was bad. You know, it must be because this idea was bad. And oftentimes there's, again, little kind of idiosyncratic reasons why it didn't take off. And a piece of advice that I've heard a lot of creators follow, that I follow too, is like, hey, if a piece of content fails and very few people saw it, that just means you can try it again. You know, try it, make it a little bit more delightful, maybe give a little bit more compelling of a hook in the first 3 seconds, maybe give it a more curiosity inducing copywriting description. You know, figure out, like, how could I try this again? And I've had, you know, videos where the first attempt only got a few comments and then the second one just blows up, you know?
Yeah.
And language is a very subtle thing. You know, the attention span is a very subtle thing. Sometimes it's the difference of like a word or a moment or a pause. And people think too hard and they think they got to like throw out the baby with the bathwater and just completely change everything about what they're doing. And yeah, it's like tinkering with it little by little over time.
Yeah, and that you hit on exactly what I was going to ask about, which is the taking content that maybe didn't you feel it's good stuff. Maybe you're answering, you know, you feel good about what you're doing there, and it doesn't perform. Reforming it, right? Like your early videos, you said captions at the bottom, they're covered up by buttons. That would probably be really low hanging fruit to go back to those and just reposition the captions and kind of go from there, right? Which, you know, depending how you created them, if you made them in the TikTok app or something, maybe that's not available, but maybe the messaging's the same and you do things a little bit differently. So that's an interesting concept, and I think something people could absolutely explore without uh, reinventing the wheel, throwing the baby out with the bathwater, whatever, whatever.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah,
as
expression
a
you want to use.
creator, the temptation is people don't do enough repurposing their old stuff. It's just more fun to make new stuff. And I've actually, like, you know, this is a question I actually get, is people say, how on earth can you do this every single day? How do you have time to do this every single day? And if people have watched my live stream, what they would know is that what I do is I actually batch my TikTok footage. So I do sessions typically about once a week where I am on a live stream. I'm taking suggestions from the audience. I'm talking to the audience, but I've got my phone, you know, and my phone is sitting here and it's set up on a tripod so the audience can see my screen, but I am looking at the lens of my phone. And I've got a list here with 20 ideas. I'm always like curating ideas throughout the week. And yeah, I just let the camera roll and I'll do 20 different TikTok videos in 1 hour, you know.
Yeah.
I'll be like, this is called How to Throw a Pie at Someone, you know, and then I just do 1 or 2 takes.
Yeah.
And I do this with any sort of video that I'm doing where it's like, I have a hard time managing 20 different video files, right? Whereas I have that loaded into my editing app as one project. And now I just clip out, one at a time. And I can mess with the variety too, where it's like, okay, yesterday I did a character bit. I'm going to do one that's a little bit more vulnerable today. That's me talking about some of the insecurities you'll face as an entrepreneur, Okay. And then the next day I'm going to do just like a really stupidly absurd one, as Vague Man. And now it's like I'm in a position where it's like I could not film another piece of footage and have content for the rest of the summer, different video content every single day, because I just have so much video footage. I've done so many interviews. I've done so many of these batching sessions that, and this is why the message I'm trying to get across to corporate America is like, if you're strategic about it, 1 hour of footage can sustain you for weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks. You just have to be intentional about it. Because most often people do the opposite. They'll film a 90-minute thing, no one watches it, and they do nothing with the footage.
Right.
I would rather do 60 minutes of just super tiny bits, 10, 15, 30, 60-second bits, and then you just chop them up and release them. And I always have different shirts nearby, so I can be switching out. I'll do 3 or 4 in one shirt, and then I switch, so they don't all look exactly the same. And then, as I'm editing, I'll throw maybe some on-screen graphics, some on-screen text, some sound effects. Maybe I'll throw in a little voiceover if that's funny. But if people get into the habit of just like, you know what, I want to get on TikTok, I'm just going to film 5 of them. I'm going to sit down in front of my phone. I'm going to have a list of 10 things. I'm going to try 5 of them, and if 1 or 2 is a hit, then it's worth it.
Well, and I've got to say too, like just off the top of my head, if somebody wants to make it even easier, right? Get a client on, like much like you're doing with the live stream, and just have them ask questions, right? Or a colleague in your same industry. I think then responses could potentially be TikTok fodder, or whatever. So that the batching can be so big, right? For streamlining process. And that'd be an easy way to get started, right? So,
it is if you're, is the thing that this is the reason why my job exists, is because people aren't comfortable being themselves, and
right. There you go.
I always tell them, it's like, they look at what I'm doing and they're like, oh, well, it's easy for you to say you're a sketch comedian. And I say, yeah, well, the fact that I spent all this time learning sketch comedy and writing sketch comedy and performing sketch comedy, like, if I was not doing anything funny, I would not be being my authentic self, Whereas I've got a friend, she was on my show once. Her name's Lydia Allen. Her TikToks tend to get about 1.4 million views. And she is not a sketch comedian. She is not an actress. She's not a model. She's a teacher. And I say, if you are a teacher, go on TikTok and teach, and her thing is she is dyslexic. She grew up, her teachers did not know how to reach her. They did not understand dyslexia. So now she just goes on TikTok and she talks about dyslexia, and she talks about how to work with dyslexic students and work with, if your child is dyslexic. And, some people have they're athletes, if I'm working with somebody who's an athlete, it's like, hey, who was that version of you that was winning? Let's get that guy on camera. Let's get that guy who's kind of laid back and confident, that happy-go-lucky girl who was just good at sports growing up. Or, some people find their voice at church. They're up there and that's where they're reading the words and that's where they're connecting with the audience. So it's like, I'm always trying to get them into that mindset, because that version of you that's comfortable, that version of you that was able to win, that is the most compelling version of you, And the thing about comedy is, like, people are funniest when they're not trying to be funny. Right. And like, if somebody is kind of a stick in the mud, I don't try to make them this really warm person. I find a situation where being a stick in the mud is going to be funny, and maybe they're going to be doing an advice thing where they're just trying to keep you out of trouble, because that part of them that's a little stoic, that's the stoic dad. That's who they really are, and when someone watches them, they'll go, oh, that guy kind of reminds me of my dad, or
Right.
my uncle or my grandpa, or, you're reaching into that part of you that's real. And, it goes, that's why I say I would tell teachers to go out there and teach, because the version of them that teaches is the version of them that's funny. Like the natural things they do as a teacher is funnier than them trying to go tell me a joke, and the more you're just your natural self, the more you'll do funny things without even trying.
Yeah, I like that. And that comes back to the magic word that's been going around, authenticity, right? Like if you're pretending to be something else, then yeah, makes it all a lot harder to do. So yeah, I think that's great advice for folks to kind of especially take those first steps. If you're a teacher, teach. And if you're whatever, do your thing, right? And I will put out another call. If anybody has TikTok questions, feel free to pop them in the chat there, right on the LinkedIn or YouTube. We're talking to Chris Bogue here about TikTok and other things. And I'm going to hit you with another one of my questions, Chris. So someone's about to dive into TikTok. And this maybe is already somewhat answered by if you're a teacher, teach, but do you have a recommended strategy? What would be, I'm doing TikTok. I have no idea what to create. How do you kind of put it together and get
We're talking TikTok for business here, right? So
TikTok
we're
for business person. Yes,
okay.
Yes.
So there are 2 TikToks that literally any business can do. So this is where I recommend you start with. You say, this is who we are. This is who works here. These are our personalities. And the second one is, this is how we solve problems. Right? So you can always go on camera. You can look straight at the audience and tell them who you are. Or you can show them a problem. You can create a situation, and this is where putting the audience as a character comes in, right? But if you're in business, you solve some sort of problem for people. So how can you recreate that? How can you put them in a situation when all of a sudden they're there in the middle of the problem, and then you can demonstrate to them how you show the problem? So an example someone gave to me once, and it's funny because Todd Clouser and I've had him on the show. I've done improv with Todd. He's a funny guy, and I've learned a lot of things about TikTok from him. But it was like we got into a fight with someone on LinkedIn because somebody had said, like, okay, well, TikTok is great for you. Maybe if you're a 21-year-old twerking celebrity, that's just fine. But what if you sell soybeans? What if you're on a farm and you sell soybeans by the tens of thousands of pounds? What could you possibly do on TikTok then? And I'm like, you could do all sorts of things. Number one, hey, welcome to the family farm. This is what we do. Just show footage. You show footage there. You've got animals. You've got people. You could do one. Hey, we just got our new machine in. Let's take a look at this bad boy. And just cool pictures of the machinery. You can show what it's doing. You can do videos being like, hey, here's one thing about our farm. We believe in ethical hiring. And you could talk about why you're more ethical than your competitors. You can, again, it's like there's animals there. There's, you could just talk about soybeans. Here's one thing people don't understand about soybeans. And you just launch into it. But it's like, and yes, if your farm hands can dance, get them freestyling in the barn or whatever. But the point is, you're not trying to sell everybody at every single moment. The point is, you want, when it's time to make that call and you're reaching out and you're trying to get someone to buy a few tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of beans, if they've seen you on TikTok and they liked you, when you make that phone call and you're like, hey, Neil, do you got a second? I'm great. And they know you because they've seen you on their phone. Yes, they're going to give you consideration, and sales is very difficult. And, you're not selling on the spot. You're usually asking for the opportunity to sell. You say, hey, let's put a meeting on the calendar. Let's talk about this. with the content, you have been out there, you've been educating, you've been building trust at scale. And now when the time comes to ask, they're going to give you that consideration. And it's like, yeah, you're selling soybeans. You have to show like what's human about that.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think you hit on another very interesting point about video overall, or to some extent social media. But like when you introduce yourself over and over like that, and kind of show what you're about, show what your business is about. Like I think we've probably all had the experience at this point where you walk into a room, say like a business event or something, and you see somebody and you're pretty sure that you know them, you've met them in the past, but really you've only interacted maybe online or see a lot of their posts and videos, and it just gets you, that close. It's an interesting way to make those first conversations a lot more productive and easier for folks, and easier to get past the gatekeeper, I guess, if you want to put it.
Oh yeah, I don't worry about gatekeepers anymore. I believe it is simultaneously what I'm doing is this like new thing that we've never really done before, because the world is so flat now and you can interact with anybody anywhere. But I also think it's more kind of like going back to a bygone time where, like, before private security was really a thing, when you could just walk into a building and just walk up to the CEO and shake their hand and be like, "Hey, I'm Chris Bogue. Glad to meet you." And part of this was because before I started my business, I was doing sales for universities. So it was a very long sale. I was selling like artificial intelligence based discussion software to professors at elite universities. And it used to be very hard because you have to call their office, or you'd have to get time with them at a conference, or go visit them on campus. But then COVID happened and everybody was at home. Nobody knew what they were doing. And I found getting on video was very easy for me to just be like, "Hey, Dr. So-and-so, like, I know you're working on this. I see your passion. You literally wrote the book on critical thinking. And here's why I want to have a chat with you. I think we can bring blah, 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 blah to your class." And yeah, I just noticed, I'm like, and the gatekeepers, depending on the school, were furious at me because they try to keep you away from the decision makers.
Right.
And I'm like, dang, if I'm out here and they want to talk to me, no one can stop them from stepping into a Zoom meeting with me. Like that is their call. They are a tenured professor. So I don't have to be kept out by the gatekeepers anymore. They are free to talk to me. And once I saw how powerful it was in a sales role, and I realized that business schools don't teach this. They don't teach you how to get on video. They don't teach you how to make TikToks. I'm like, oh, geez, I better go start teaching this right now before somebody else starts doing it.
Right.
So yeah, that's why I'm, you see me here today.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and the world being much more flat, right, or much smaller that you mentioned there, I think is such a huge opportunity, especially for the solopreneur, smaller business owner, right? Like that, like you said, so many of those barriers are gone. Distance is no longer as much of a thing. I do work all over the world, which I was very like geographically based prior to the pandemic, and making a shift where my company serves people everywhere. You and I would never be having this conversation in the old world. It's not a huge jump, but over a couple of Great Lakes to get from where you are to where I am. And, it's a beautiful thing. And it's a good thing.
It drives me nuts because I feel like I have, discovered the holy grail. I work on this stuff and I think it's amazing. And I work with people too. I have clients in Australia and New Zealand and Spain and, all these places. And I talk to all these corporate leaders, and all they want to do is just turn everything into this dehumanized, automated process. And again, it goes back to this idea of don't think of a million people, think of the one person there. It's like, I really view every single view I get on every single, that is one person sat down and gave their attention to me. And like, yeah, if you just treat people like individuals, you can get a meeting with pretty much anybody, anywhere, whenever you want. sales is just so used to this dehumanizing generic way of speaking that it's like totally foreign to them. But yeah, anybody who's willing to get out there and just, make friends and look through the video camera. And again, imagine that someone's sitting right there and just speaking to them directly. If you can do that, you're going to be fine in this next iteration of whatever business is.
Yeah. And I think you nailed it there. Just be willing to make friends, right? Be friendly, and these conversations can happen. So
Yeah.
that's very well put. I'm gonna put out one more call to people about TikTok questions as we kind of wind down the hour, because yes, if you have a TikTok question, put it in the chat either on YouTube or on LinkedIn. And part of the reason that I'm saying that is we did want to talk a little more about sales. And as long as nobody's popping in a TikTok question, I am going to. Oh, you know what? Actually, I got something else that you touched on that maybe we'll hit before we get to sales. So, here's my last TikTok thing. So we've been posting about it this month because this is TikTok month. It's part of the Vidwheel Creator Network, which is a video community where we teach people how to create their own content and become more efficient and gain more reach in their solopreneurships through video. And that's my little plug. What'd you think, Chris? Was that good?
Nice.
No. All right. So anyway, concerns have come up when we put out things on TikTok, and the top concerns I've heard. Actually, we could do this like a lightning round. Do you want to do that? That could be fun. You're up for improv. All right, concerns. What's your one word answer to, or one quick sentence answer to, my audience isn't on the platform?
Yes, they are. There's a billion people on the platform. Your audience might not be creating content, but they've probably downloaded the app and wasted some time scrolling.
All right. How about privacy concerns?
Fair. That's fair. All the big tech companies are pretty bad, and so is Apple. And yeah, I'm concerned too, but I've got to pay my bills, and I don't rely on any one network, and I'm building my own community because I don't really trust any of them. I just kind of am forced to live in the world we live in.
Okay. Somebody who says, I don't have the time. You kind of already answered this, but.
I mean, you got to make time if you want to get on video. And especially if you're in sales and you're working much longer than 8 hours a day, if you're working 50, 60 hours a week, making cold calls, you could schedule an hour a week to do video. Most people just can't get started. So you could always hire me. I'll have a course coming out soon. But yeah, it's what are you going to spend your time doing? And people, the business world likes to think that creativity should happen on the nights and weekends outside of work. And I say, no, teams actually need to schedule time for creativity. Otherwise, it will not happen.
And I would contend that hour a week might mean that you have to make a lot less cold calls to hit those numbers. Am I right?
If you're doing video effectively, you need far less cold calls than you used to. It's like it is simultaneously you find your people easier. And when you do call, you don't have to chase them around as much. I've got a very good show rate on my meetings. When I'm sending videos out to people, I send 5 maximum and then I'm done. I tell teams, if your team can't make 5 in an hour, you need practice, but you can certainly make 5 in an hour. We all have amazing HD cameras in our pockets.
Right.
Yeah, it's just, you have to decide to do it.
All right. One last concern that I've heard a couple of times. It's not on brand to be on TikTok.
I don't even know what that means. It is just another platform. These platforms, it's like, I hear the same thing about LinkedIn. They're like, well, LinkedIn's so serious. It's like, this is just a place where people are sitting, and, you got to get the conventions, you got to get it down, but it's like, anybody can be on like the second you show up there, it's just a person talking to the camera, you know, and
Yeah.
there's no one way to do it. I don't know. I think that's just an excuse for like people don't want to learn this new platform, but we're all competing for the same screen. You know, it's like me and you and Disney Plus and Hulu and your prospects, friends and family. Everybody is trying to get on that one screen. All right.
Yeah.
So it's like you have the potential to be in front of, I mean, actually, we can go out. This is a tangent, but I feel I should mention this in case your audience doesn't know. How TikTok's algorithm works is it's designed for you to go viral even if you don't have a big following. So you put out a piece of content, it sends it to a group of 100 people first. And if it overperforms there, if it gets a certain amount of complete watches, it gets watched twice a certain amount of times, it gets a certain level of engagement, they kick it out to an audience of 1,000. And if it overperforms there, it goes to an audience of 10,000 and then 100,000. And it's designed so you can just show up and go viral out of nothing, you know? So if you talking about your thing for 30 seconds and getting seen by 1 million people isn't on brand, then skip out on the party, you know? But for me as a solopreneur, that's too valuable to me. It's too valuable to be, you know, to not have to pay for ads and get seen by 1 million people talking about what I sell. I can't pass that up.
Yeah. Yeah, that is and I'm glad you brought up the distribution method and how much different it is than say the networks that we're live streaming on, where the traditional setup is you build that following, you put out videos, the videos are shown to your following. Whereas TikTok, the best way I ever heard it explained is solopreneurs got just as good a chance to go viral as, you know, Coca-Cola or something. And it's got to do with that setup that you're saying, where it's like, if people react to your video, the content itself is what's going to drive its distribution versus already having a distribution network set up and like kind of doing it backwards, you know?
Well, here's another thing I want your audience to think about. And this was a big part of me deciding why I was going to go down this road. Now, I don't talk about politics as part of my business. I just avoid that hornet's nest. I am trying to do something that both people on the left and the right can get behind. But I was very inspired by a study I read on the 2020 election. And there was a bunch of researchers and they were trying to figure out what changes a person's mind. And they were specifically looking at swing voters, right? So people who voted for one party in 2016 and changed their vote in 2020. So very small percentage of the population. Nobody does this. And they found that the ads that did not work were the ads that were too overproduced. If it had a bunch of Hollywood special effects and graphs and numbers, people are just like, whatever. But the ads that were effective was a person looking straight at the camera, saying, I'm a voter. Here's why I'm voting for Donald Trump. You know, I live in Ohio. I'm a farmer. Here's why I'm voting for Joe Biden. That was what convinced people. And once I learned that, I started seeing it everywhere, particularly with large brands. And anyone could see this if they go through your newsfeed. You're going to see Fortune 50 brands. You're going to see million and billion dollar companies. They are doing ads where they're like, whoa, hey, it's me and my family making Jell-O pudding together. What's going on? And they are trying to look like a regular person talking to their phone. You know, so people don't trust the media. They don't trust politicians. They don't trust institutions. I'm not saying that's good or bad. I'm saying right now, an individual talking to the camera has more trust than those other things. So if you have something to say, just go say it straight to the camera.
I would add to that, if you have a following at all, right? Everybody's got a network if you're in business of people. And they all probably have a good level of, you know, the know, like, trust factor with you. So that can really ramp up your effectiveness. And then the people who know you less will begin to know you more by doing that stuff and hopefully trust you and so on. But even people you don't know, that is definitely a trend that's happening. And I think you see it not just in politics, but like right down to, you know, if I'm buying something on Amazon, I'm looking at the reviews, right? And those are what drive my buying decision, much more than what's written up about the product. Like what, you know, all that stuff. It's really driven by like people, real people who have something to say about a product or a service. So I
Yeah,
agree with
and you'll discover it too. That's the thing I tell people is like I was on a 3 or 4 year creative dry spell before I started doing this. I had been out of the comedy game for a couple of years. I got burnt out. And people were like, why don't you go do sketch comedy on video? And I didn't think I was good enough. I didn't think I could come up with anything funny, and then it's like I got on camera and it just kind of came back out of me, and this is the journey that every creator I know follows, where it's like you get on camera and all of a sudden you get a little taste of success, something lands and you get a bunch of DMs and comments of people saying like, hey, I really like this.
Yeah.
You discover your talents, you discover what lands with people. And again, I always believe you keep an open audience with dialogue. They're your North Star. They're going to tell you, this goes back to my comedy days too. It's like, maybe you thought it was the funniest bit on earth, but if the audience didn't laugh, that's on you, and I would talk to comedians and they'd be like, stupid audience didn't laugh. This joke is brilliant, and I'm like, maybe it needs some work, and again,
your market disagrees, right?
Yeah. And even if it doesn't take off, I'm like, so what? If I have a post and I only get 5 comments on it, those are the fans. Those are the fans. Yeah. They got it, and I always say it's like, if I make a post on LinkedIn or TikTok and it gets 4 comments, and one of those turns into a conversation and I get a corporate training deal out of that, that's huge. That's huge, and most of the people doing the solopreneurs, if you're doing sales, at a certain level, you only need a handful of deals in the pipeline every month to be doing well for yourself, So it's like, do not discount something just because 3 people commented and 50 people saw it. If you gave a speech to a room full of 50 people, that would be huge to you. But you see 50 views on TikToks and they're like, oh, what a failure. I'm never going to do this again. And it's like,
Well, I had an experience that I retell a lot where I was doing my financials. This was years ago, end of the year, planning for the next year, looking at the like really ideal clients I had. And I crunched all the numbers and I wrote down the number of new clients I had to acquire that year. And that number was 4 to make, it a successful year. And like, that was, at least for me, a bit of an epiphany moment where it was, you think you have to talk to everybody. You think, just like you're saying, that it's got to be all these views on videos to make it worthwhile. But if you crunch your numbers and you need 4 new clients, then you can like really change your mentality, or 10 or whatever it is, So it's I think a lot of folks need to look at it through that lens to kind of get there, and then you go from there. So okay, well, I'm not seeing any other questions come in here, and we are running longer than planned. I know you said you had a little extra time, so I appreciate you coming out, Chris, and I appreciate you going long. And your knowledge of TikTok is great. I'm sure I'll hear a lot about it from the community. I do want to give you a chance for last thoughts before maybe you play us out on your synthesizer.
Yeah. I will say my last thought that I'll leave you with, this is my little twist on Andy Warhol's famous saying. Andy Warhol said everybody would get 15 minutes of fame before they die. I say it doesn't matter who you are. Somewhere on the internet, there's a million people who'd be into what you're saying. You just got to get out there and find them.
Nice.
Ready?
I love it. Yeah, let's do it.